Had a couple of sessions face-to-face in Flagstaff, and then everything else was done online, and she had no problems with it at all. So, good news and bad news, or bad news, good news and good news. So this is the wave of the future. You live, I don't know if you know where you live, but this is the Navajo Reservation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I know, you can go to the metropolis of Tuba City, but you know, not everybody lives in Tuba City. So pretty much, you're going to have to be doing a lot of counseling, and either you're going to have to force your clients to drive 1,000 miles to your office, or you're going to have to do it online if they've got internet. So this is one of the things you have to think about. This is the wave of the future, and it seems to work. And I'll give you the statistics in just a second. So we're going to talk about counseling online. So one of the ways that you can do this is to email back and forth. And you ask them a question, and they will give you a narrative, and from that narrative you'll ask them another question, and then they'll give you another narrative. Hopefully that's the way it works. Or they'll give you a series, you will give them a series of questions, and they will answer those questions. So that's the way online counseling usually works. As I said, it seems to, all the people that I've talked to who have used online counseling like it. And well, why would you rather have online counseling than face-to-face?
Some people may not be comfortable face to face, and they're rather.
That's a good point. Especially young kids. I know, they're like video game freaks or something, I don't know.
Just too shy.
Yeah, well, they're just more comfortable. Not only that, but maybe their avatar has a problem. And it's their avatar that needs counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I lost the sword of enchantment or something. I'm so depressed because my magical tiger disappeared or something. I don't know.
Aw.
It's okay.
I can relate.
It's okay. Okay, so let's talk about this and see what you guys think about online counseling.
This PowerPoint is not on Upwork.
I apologize.
Okay, just.
Are you gonna load it up?
You mean right this second?
No, after class?
I'll tell you what. Let me see if I can do this. Wait a minute, it's too big. That's the problem. So I could load it up right this second, couldn't I?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Do it when you're in Florida.
Oh, let me see. Let me see if I can do it. Wait a minute. I need to go. And of course I have no Firefox. My Firefox disappeared. My Firefox keeps going away. And I have no idea why. It's just on this computer. The other computer I have no problem with. It'll go away. Where's Firefox? Ah! Okay, there it is right there. I think. There it is. All right. Now you can watch me struggle with the internet.
It's waiting.
I got in trouble the other day because I couldn't find Google Docs. Somebody sent me a link to Google Docs, and evidently Google Docs is just a single thing. I don't know. Anyway, I got in trouble. Couldn't find it. Okay, now I need to go to, wait a minute, in one line. Oh, I watch too much news. I'm so worried about this whole Kavanaugh thing. Evidently, the FBI is done with their investigation. Yeah, so the Senate has it today, so they're going to review it today. And Blackboard. Okay. There we go. This is 291. 291. assignments. File. All right, this is online counseling. Submit. The file must be attached. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right, browse my computer. There we go. And this is counseling, wherever it is. There it is, counseling PowerPoints. And this is counseling online. Open and submit. Oh, it's thinking. Okay. If there's a lot of pictures, it'll take like forever. Or, I don't know, it all depends.
Yeah, Senator from Nebraska was speaking when I left.
Sassa?
Mhm.
Sassy?
Mhm.
S-A-S-S-E?
Mhm.
Yeah, he doesn't like Trump.
Yeah, I can tell.
Was he saying negative things about Kavanaugh, or was he saying positive things about Kavanaugh?
He was pointing out the negative characteristics of Kavanaugh, not so much targeting him, but just what he's already done and said, you know, that's not trustworthy enough.
Well, that's interesting.
And not good enough because, you know, like what you say, if we do this, you know, what does that mean to the females? Or does it mean, will it prove to them that we hate them, that we don't like them?
Right.
Yeah.
He is Republican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty surprising to hear him sound so much like a Democrat
Yeah.
and speaking.
Well, it
against
is.
yeah.
It's scary for the
It's scary for
the Republicans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay, and everybody in television land got to watch me do that. Okay, so congratulations. Here we go. It should be up. You may be able to find it now. And this thing should work. There we go. Okay. Okay, so the good news. Psychologists commonly refer to any therapy delivered by telecommunication tools or devices as telepsychology. It's brand new. If you go into a journal from the 2010s, then you're not going to find it. It's brand new. It's like 5 years old. This is new, brand new stuff. You may hear it called web therapy, phone therapy, text therapy, or online therapy. It's got a lot of names. It's all the same stuff. Anytime you're interacting with a psychologist using a website, a phone, or a mobile app, you could be taking part in telepsychology services, of course. I don't know how to use apps. I haven't figured that one out yet. I do have a phone. I think it's an Android, I think. Isn't it? Yeah. My wife's a lot better at it than I am. It's got a thing on the side, and if I pull it, it turns it into something strange. So I never take that thing out. Otherwise it screws it up. Anyway, okay, so, and people are always telling me, well, download the app, man. And of course I have no idea. Even if I download it, I wouldn't have a clue how to use it. So I try not to do that. I can't even get text messages on my phone, much to my wife's chagrin. More to my daughter's chagrin. My daughter really gets irritated. I mean, she evidently she communicates by texting, and that's all. She never talks to people. She just writes some notes with her thumbs. Technology. How smart are your thumbs anyway? Do your thumbs have to be really intelligent in order to do that? If they're too big, can you really?
My husband has to use his other fingertips.
Yeah, I'm
because his
thinking
thumb's
my
too
thumbs
big.
are way too big. I got hands like a sausage fingers or something. I don't know if they'll work. Technology can contribute to an evolution in how people receive psychotherapy or work with a psychologist, of course. And here we've got an ITV situation. This lady is counseling two people at the same time. It looks, oh no, that's her on the right. That's the person she's counseling. Researchers are taking great interest in telepsychology and telehealth. evaluating how well it works, especially compared to in-person, in-office psychotherapy sessions. And we're going to see some research in just a second. But much like the technology, the research is still new, and there's a lot of science that science doesn't know. There is a problem, there may be a problem with people using their avatar, like I said before, or their alter ego, using another persona while they're in counseling. And therefore, you're not really treating them, you're treating their character or something. It's like, are we going to fix the character that you've created? Well, if you really get into your character, that will be part. No, it won't be part of who you are. But potentially, I mean, I know. So you've got somebody with dissociative identity disorder. I know. So all of a sudden, you're treating one person, and another person pops up. I don't know. We'll think about it.
You know, like what they call dysmorphia, you know, how a lot of people want to look like their avatars. And they'll be getting like plastic surgery to look like their avatars.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, the main thing was perceived, but it's also here too. You know, with the girl wanting to look like Barbie, the guy wanting to look like Ken. So, you know, with that, they put on another identity, you know, and mentally they are kind of stuck in that and avoid who they really are.
That's strange. Yeah, that is. Yeah.
So it would be a part of their personality.
Yeah,
because I have a brother who's a hardcore gamer, and sometimes I worry about that for him.
Okay.
You know, like how involved he gets.
Is his avatar more attractive than he is?
No, he's a guy. I mean, he's not like.
No, what I mean is to him, you know, this guy carries a sword, and he's got great big muscles, and he's 7 feet tall, and he's, you know, green.
I think for him, he uses that as a way of a coping mechanism for being out of the military too.
Ah.
So it's his way of keeping in touch with his friends in other states while he plays. That's who he talks and plays with.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're stuck, aren't we?
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen next. There are a few points to consider before signing up for any services that are offered exclusively online or by telephone. It's convenient. Online therapy can take less time away from the office or your workday, or for you to worry about traffic. You just sit there in front of your computer and you talk to somebody. I'm guessing we're talking Skype here. I have a problem with Skype. My biggest problem with Skype is that it doesn't always work. Am I held on? Okay. I know. My friend from Bangladesh. This guy comes from a third world country, and he keeps making fun of me because I can't make my Skype work in the middle of the Navajo reservation. So, yes, ma'am.
So what about confidentiality?
We're going to talk about confidentiality in just a second. Yeah, that can be a problem, especially if you're in an office setting. Probably you need to be somewhere that's isolated, where other people can't hear you. Of course, that's always a problem anyway. Yes, sir.
I've been a part of that, like the lady was in the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and.
What'd you think?
She was like, I was at IHS in Pinon, and she was like, I was like, where you at? And she's all like, California. And I was like, where in California? And then she was like, San Diego, and I guess she has like her own office room, and she had like all these Hopi stuff, like Kachina dolls. I was like, oh, are those Hopis? And because I noticed it, and she's like, yeah, I like to gather Hopi stuff. So it looked pretty cool. It looked like a really cool office, you know, high tech everything.
Except for the Hopis, Kachina dolls, yeah.
It was good too. Like it was private, like
sure.
you said, comfy down, whatever. But
confidentiality.
I went into a room where
Right.
it was private, and they closed the door, and she closed the door too. So it was good. It was normal.
So it was more like this.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it was like more comfortable. Like how IHS has the
Nice place to sit.
yeah, the couch, and yeah.
Here, lay down on the couch.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I wasn't uncomfortable, you know. Actually, I was more comfortable, you know.
Because you were face to face with the lady.
Like she wasn't right there. It's just
Right.
like over, yeah. Kind of like talking on the phone or something.
Right. Except it's more like Skyping.
Yeah.
Yeah, Skype, yeah. And it all depends on where your computer is when you're Skyping, because you can look really big, or you can look really small. They can look at your ear or something, or whatever. Anyway, okay, so, yeah, so we're talking about dialing in. You don't have to travel, which is a nice thing. You didn't have to go to San Diego to visit this lady. You can dial a number, log in to a site, and the session can happen wherever you are comfortable. Of course, it's synchronous, so you have to be, you're doing it at the same time. Unlike the online classes that we teach here, that's asynchronous. So I can put my stuff on there, and you can do it whenever you want, 3 o'clock in the morning. If you're a night owl, you know, you do everything at 5. Or if you get up early, which I try not to. I try to go to bed late and get up early. Compared to traditional in-person therapy, it can sometimes appear less expensive. Some apps will advertise pricing that provides unlimited use for a weekly or a monthly fee. The other question, and the reality is that you have good therapists and you have bad therapists, but the reality is that it doesn't really matter who the therapist is. I'm sorry, it's you. You're going to have to, I mean, you're the one being counseled. You guys are the therapist. But it's the person who needs to fix themselves anyway. As I keep saying, they will fix themselves. You're not going to fix anybody. So no matter whether you consider yourself good or bad, it really doesn't make any difference. They're going to have to do it themselves. The online session may seem significantly lower than in-office visits because you're paying by the hour. And this one you're paying by the hour also, but if you have to be there at 2 o'clock, it seems like it's more expensive because you have to drive there, you have to be there, on time, they're late, and you still only get an hour, and it costs you $125. This will cost you $125, but since it's at your convenience, it seems like it's cheaper. If you're not interested in using health insurance for psychotherapy, this can be a benefit, of course. The question is, will your insurance company cover the cost of online therapy? That's the question. Obviously, IHS uses it with people in San Diego, evidently. Online communication is very comfortable for many people, especially younger adults or those who use technology often. Of course, since I don't know a jack about apps, I'm kind of SOL. More people are using email, webinars, and text messaging to communicate, and it can seem more comfortable or easier than talking to someone in person, especially when revealing personal or private information. It can provide access to those who can't get to an office, and the reality may be the younger kids feel more comfortable talking online anyway. Everything seems to be happening online these days. They're dating online. All their communication seems to be online. Even when they are close to somebody else, they seem to be on their phone talking. I don't know if they're talking to the guy that's walking beside them or not, but usually they're on their phones. And despite the fact that they're right next to each other, a lot of times they're talking to somebody else. Or maybe they're talking to each other, as I said. I don't understand this stuff. I kind of like to look in people's faces and have a conversation. But I don't know, maybe in the future people are going to be more introverted. And yeah, I don't know. And maybe we'll have to change the definition of introvert and extrovert. You have an online extrovert and you have a person-to-person introvert or something, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to change all this. But I don't have to worry about it. I'm getting close to retirement age. You guys are the ones who are going to have to worry about this stuff. And it's all going to be changing. Some people with chronic illnesses or disabilities may not be able to drive or easily it's not easy for them to leave their home. In these situations, web or telephone-based therapy may be their only option for help. And of course, here we are on the reservation. Some people live way, way out and they live on mud roads. And of course, they don't want to bounce over those roads just to go to talk to somebody. This may be an easier way of doing it. Since there are so many people that are spread out, this may be much, much better. And it's cheaper. I mean, here we've got IHS is using the lady in San Diego. The lady in San Diego probably costs, she's probably charging, she's not charging you anything, but she's charging IHS through the nose because it's a government organization.
Yeah.
So she's probably making $250, $300 an hour, which is
That's
not
why
bad.
Harry had to cut it short, you know?
It doesn't make any difference whether you cut it short. If you got on that phone, she got her $300.
Online therapy is still not an age limit to this? So you can counsel a child?
Oh, good question. That's an excellent
Special
question.
setting would need to be set up for this child in order to accommodate, say, an interview or counseling?
Right.
And if it involves maybe family or abuse, how is the situation handled?
That's an excellent question. I'm guessing it wouldn't. I'm guessing they wouldn't do it. It would have to be face to face. But that's, of course, a special case. This is, like I said, this is brand new, and they're still working through all the problems. We're going to talk about types of therapy. We're going to talk about people that are being treated for depression. And one of the things we're going to find is this is a very common way to deal with that. So we're really not talking about sexual abuse. We're not talking about schizophrenia or any of the more serious problems. We're talking about fairly simple problems, dealing with them online. Yeah, but that is a good question. Yes, ma'am.
So what is simple problems?
Neuroses, anxiety, depression, agoraphobia, panic disorder, no psychoses, not bipolar disorder, probably not borderline personality disorder. I'm guessing not antisocial personality disorder. These are things that you have to, that are very difficult to deal with. Potentially alcoholism would be one that you could deal with. But I haven't seen any studies where they were talking about doing therapy for alcoholism online. Wow. Wow, you know, one of the problems you have with people who are alcoholics, of course, they're really big liars. I don't know if you've ever been around an alcoholic to think why. They're really good at it. They're like professionals. And the problem with doing it online, they could use a persona, an angry persona, or maybe a subordinate persona, and boy, they could just get away with murder. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, face-to-face is a little bit easier with alcoholics. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, the simpler things like depression, anxiety, agoraphobia. And I've been talking to one of the individuals that you're going to be counseling online, and I think agoraphobia is going to be her problem. So agoraphobia, of course, is fear of the marketplace. It means fear of the marketplace. This is an individual that can't leave their house. So how in the world are we going to counsel these people if they can't leave their house? Well, this is about the only way you can do it. So I thought that made a lot of sense. I'm not sure what the other one is, what problem the other one is going to have. The research hasn't yet shown that standalone therapy online or via texting is effective for everyone in every situation. And of course, this is the problem. It may work with some select individuals, people suffering from depression, people suffering anxiety disorder, but we don't know about anything else because they haven't really used it. They haven't really done the research looking at it. Some sites advertise that they offer therapy, but those claims may be misleading or false. For example, people behind the apps may not be licensed or qualified to provide therapy. The biggest problem is that here we have a lady that is counseling people in Arizona from San Diego. Is she licensed in the state of Arizona? And the answer is probably yes, because California has more stringent licensure than Arizona does. And Arizona is kind of, can I say that? They follow California fairly
I
directly.
should have asked her for identification, huh?
Exactly, and you should have said, let me see your license, I want to make sure that you can actually do therapy for me.
Well, next time I will.
Next time you, you rake that lady over the coals, and let's find out if she's really licensed. Licenses are granted by each state with their own laws and rules, much like each state determines what residents must know to earn a driver's license. But unlike driver's licenses, which allow you to legally operate a car in all states, a healthcare provider is limited to providing services in the state in which they are licensed. So if you are licensed, this is kind of a problem here on the reservation because if you live in Arizona and you work in New Mexico, I mean, half the time you don't know whether you're in New Mexico or Arizona anyway, especially if you're driving to Gallup. You know, is Crystal in New Mexico or is it? When do I cross over into New Mexico? Is it at the lake? I know, I just keep going back and forth. I never know where I am. Not that it makes any difference, I'm sure. The provider must be licensed in the jurisdiction where they are located, and making that determination may be difficult to do if you don't know where he or she is physically located. So you're not going to get somebody from India that you can talk to. It just doesn't work that way. It's not like Apple Care where you never know where the person is. They may be in Bangladesh, they may be in Dubai. You never know where they are. They may be in Bombay, which doesn't exist anymore. That's an old name. Calcutta, which doesn't exist anymore. It's got like 14 million people, but it doesn't exist anymore. It has a new name. It has the Indian name, that's the English name, Calcutta. Psychotherapy works in part because psychologists ensure that clients have a safe, private space to share deeply personal and sometimes difficult stories, thoughts, or emotions. So it's up to you to find some place where you feel safe. You can't do this on the subway, like you have a subway. But you can't do it in a taxi cab. That's not someplace where you would potentially feel safe. You're in an Uber driving to the baseball game. Wait a minute, the Diamondbacks didn't win, did they? So now they're not playing. Okay. You're in Boston driving to a baseball game. What happens and is said in a therapy office stays there with the exception of a few situations. The site or the app you use should at a minimum be HIPAA-compliant, and HIPAA has to do with hospital confidentiality. Just like FERPA has to do with educational confidentiality, HIPAA has to do with hospital confidentiality. They can't show just anybody your records. You have access to your records, your doctor has access to your records, and theoretically, that's it. Nobody else can actually access your records, and that has to do with HIPAA. So HIPAA compliant is very similar to FERPA compliant, and they have the ability to verify your identity and your therapist's identity. What they usually use is your name and your birthday, strangely enough. So when somebody calls me, when I call the doctor on the phone, they always ask me what my birthday is. Now, of course, you can find that online, I guess. My birthday's online, I'm guessing. Yeah, it probably is. My birthday is actually coming up. As exciting as that is, I'm going to be a year older. Oh boy. Many insurance companies cover the treatment of mental health and substance abuse disorders, but online therapy or web therapy services are often not covered or reimbursed by most insurance providers, and this can be a problem, especially if paying for the therapy is maybe a trick for you. Total of 60. This is internet-based versus face-to-face cognitive behavioral intervention for depression. A total of 62 participants suffering from depression were randomly assigned to the therapist-supported internet-based intervention group. There were 32 in that group. The face-to-face group was 30. 30 plus 32 equals 62. It was an 8-week intervention based on cognitive behavioral therapy principles. And here are the results. The intention to treat analysis yielded no significant between-group difference, online versus face-to-face group, for any of the pre to post-treatment measurements. So they looked at, they treated them for 8 weeks. One group was online, the other group was face-to-face. And when they looked at the individuals afterwards, what they discovered, there was no significant difference between the degree of recovery for either group. Post-treatment, both treatment conditions revealed significant symptom changes compared to before the intervention. So whether it was online or whether it was face-to-face, they got pretty much the same results. And there was change for both individuals, for both groups of individuals. This has to do with panic disorder. They were using the same therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. A total of 113 consecutive patients were randomly assigned to 10 weeks of either guided internet delivered cognitive behavioral therapy. There were 53 in the internet group and there were 60 in the face-to-face group. After treatment and at a 6-month follow-up, patients were again assessed by the psychiatrist blind to treatment conditions. So they had 113 people. And this is what they discovered. They found no statistically significant differences between the two treatment conditions using a mixed models approach to account for missing data. Group CBT utilized considerably more therapist time than did the internet cognitive behavioral therapy. So we had this is panic disorder that they're talking about. So one group was treated with online therapy, and the other group was treated in a group situation, and they found no difference between the two groups after 6 months of therapy. So that's panic disorder, that's depression, simpler things to treat. 2 new studies suggest that online therapy may be effective for treating mental health issues. Online therapy is increasingly popular, particularly among people who live in rural areas and cannot easily get to a therapist's office, or who are concerned about costs of in-person therapy. So this tends to be cheaper. The question is, will your insurance company pay for it? And if it does, this is as good as, seems to be as good as the other. New technology may pose some concerns about the security of online therapy, just as you were saying. How in the world do you maintain the confidentiality online? This continues to be an issue, but research suggests that benefits may be significant for the select individual. The benefits of online therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. The first study published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal reviewed studies of online cognitive behavioral therapy conducted between 2000 and 2012. So this is a meta-analysis. This is from Canada. Canada tends to be a little bit more progressive than the United States, mainly because they don't have to go through the same machinations in order to get something started, in order to get something done. So they have started this online therapy long before we did in the United States. If you think about it, the internet wasn't invented until 1993. Actually, it was invented a long time before that, but it was all military. As soon as the wall went down, the Cold War stopped, then all the technology that they had developed for the military, all this the GPS and GIS and all of this stuff for targeting, they gave to the civilian community. Well, they sold it. That's what they did. Yeah, they made tons of bucks. Anyway, but all this stuff had been developed for the military, so that's when the internet started in 1993, World Wide Web, as it were. So that was only 7 years. I mean, they started this therapy in Canada 7 years after that. So, that's the Canadians as compared to the Americans. They're a little bit behind. CBT is a widely used and well-researched form of therapy, with most studies saying in-person forms of this treatment are highly effective. CBT focuses on reducing negative thoughts, thereby changing behavior and alleviating symptoms. If you work with CBT, one of the things you do is if the person it says, well, I'm not good enough, why am I here? Then you say, well, that thought is a negative thought. That thought is illogical. You need to not think that way anymore. And that's what CBT is all about, is changing their illogical thoughts. Everybody has to love me. Usually an individual suffering from codependency. The reason they're codependent is because they feel unlovable, and this is a person that loves them, so this is a person that shows love to them, so they can't, they have a difficult time separating themselves from this individual. CBT, that's an illogical thought. So that's one of the things that's how CBT works. Most of the students track participants for a relatively short period of time after undergoing therapy, ranging from 8 weeks to 2 years. Researchers found online CBT could be effectively reduce symptoms of depression and other mental health issues. In some cases, online CBT was even more effective than traditional in-person therapy. So there you go. Sometimes it worked better, but of course, it all depends on the individual that you're dealing with. Are they astute as far as computers are concerned? I'm confused about doodle polls. Doodle, isn't that something that you draw? A doodle poll? I know, they keep wanting me to take a doodle poll. Hey, it doesn't make doodle poll, Google Docs, what the hell are we talking about here? Most online CBT sessions focused on short-term goals and symptom relief. And that's what you'll be doing. When you're talking to your clients, they'll tell you about their problems. You will say, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Why don't we work on this one symptom, trying to alleviate that symptom? And of course, then they will write back. Of course, this is a character. They don't really have this problem. Then they'll write back, well, I tried what you said, and I've decided that you made a lot of sense. And that's the way it's going to work for you guys. Because the study did not track participants for an extended period of time, the researchers do not know if the symptoms were permanently alleviated. Of course, they did track them for 2 years. 2 years is a relatively long time. Sometimes with therapy, that's about the best you can think of doing. 2 years is a long time. The team that conducted the analysis cautions that some human connection is lost with online therapy, but they also say that evidence supporting online therapy's effectiveness is significant. And one of the things that you're going to note is that the younger the person is, the more astute they are with apps and Skyping and all of this technology stuff, probably the more effective the online techniques are going to be. The older they are, the more they are seeking face-to-face contact, the more they're seeking that type of therapy. That's just a guess. I'm not sure. I can't. Some people it works on, some people it doesn't. I would imagine people that are more astute as far as technology is concerned are more likely to be helped by this. Another study published by the Journal of the American Medical Association Psychiatry looked at how online therapy affects the well-being of new doctors. Young doctors often work long hours, including nights and weekends, and the stress of those long shifts can lead to mental health issues such as depression and suicidal thoughts. One previous study found that suicidal thoughts increased fourfold during medical residency. So if you ever have talked to a doctor and talked about residency, they're working 80, 100-hour weeks, which sounds god-awful, but that's what they do. That's what they have to do to become a doctor. It's almost like torture. Usually it has to do with the emergency room, and they're dealing with crises time after time. So a lot of these individuals are under a great deal of stress. Researchers looked at 200 first-year medical residents working 80-hour weeks and overnight shifts compared to doctors who received no online therapy. Doctors who received 4 30-minute online sessions before beginning their residency had fewer suicidal thoughts. That's just 2 hours of therapy. That's 4 30-minute therapy sessions. And they were able to reduce suicidal thoughts in the individuals that were going through residency. Because the sessions were delivered online, researchers say it might be possible to provide such treatment to other doctors while still keeping costs low. And of course, doctors, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to go through medical school, so most of these guys are pretty poor. And well, it's later on they become millionaires. Okay, there you go. That's online therapy. Will you be able to do it? Sure. Of course you will. All you need to do is ask them questions, just like if they were in the classroom with you. So you'll write them a question. They will answer your question, and then that will generate a new question from you, and then they'll answer your next question. That's the way the therapy works. If you're dealing with CBT, CBT has to do with the illogical thoughts. If they have an illogical thought, of course, you can correct that illogical thought and tell them that this is what they need to do. Okay, so there you go. That's the online therapy part. You even found it. I gave it to you online. I know, I'm so excited. I actually did something correctly. Wait a minute. All right, so let's go to chapter 10. I'll try to get through all these chapters before the 17th. We will start counseling on the 17th. We'll try to start counseling on the 17th. Maybe we won't have to. Maybe there will be more sessions that we can have. Everybody will need to do 10 therapy sessions. So how do you pass this? How do you pass the therapy part? All you have to do is do it. All you have to do is talk to somebody, okay? I'm not going to tell you, oh, you need to ask this question right now. That's not the way it works. Your therapy technique will be different from mine. My therapy technique deals with a lot of jokes, listening. Well, I try to joke, but it never works. I know, it's tragic. Anyway, so I don't expect you to be like me. That would not work. I'm from Indiana, you guys are not. Is anybody from Indiana? No? Okay. So why would you want to talk like I do? Or why would you want to counsel like I do? Works for me, doesn't work for anybody else. So the point is that don't worry about what happens during your therapy session. You can't get it wrong. Write that down. I can't get it wrong. No matter what I do, I can't get it wrong. As long as you talk to the client, or that you get the client to talk, you may not have to say a word. I mean, if they're that vocal, wow, good job. And that's what you want. You want them to talk anyway. You don't want it. The more talking you do, the less talking they do. And of course, what you're trying to do is get them to talk. That's what therapy's all about. That's why they call it talk therapy. Okay, so what's the point? My point is that don't worry about the therapy sessions. This isn't going to be that painful. I'm not going to be listening to what you're saying. I mean, look at all the people in the room. I can't really listen to everybody's conversations. I'll probably sit back here and play video games. I'm just kidding. I don't play video games. I just want you to do it, okay? You need to practice. When you go off to graduate school, if you want to be a counselor, if you go off to graduate school and you become a counselor, you will learn different techniques. One of the problems we have here is we haven't really come up with teaching you techniques, but that's what you're going to learn. You just need to know that you can do it. So you need to practice. And this is just practice, okay? So don't worry about it. Okay. The better your character, the better it is for the person who's practicing. Who did we have in here? We had somebody with dissociative identity disorder. And, well, he didn't really have that. But he was good. He was really good. Everybody really enjoyed counseling him because he really got into the part. I think you've just seen a movie about it or something. But he was really good. So the better you are at your character, the more practice your colleague is going to have. So please try to figure out what your character is supposed to act like. You're going to run into all kinds of people. If there's somebody you don't want to run into, it's the first person you're going to run into. I can promise you that. If you think you can't handle a rapist, guess who the first guy that's going to come wandering through the door will be a rapist. It's going to happen every time. A lot of times, if it's a rapist, they won't have a woman talk counselor for that individual. Unless they know you can handle it. Because rapists tend to be relatively manipulative, just like alcoholics are very manipulative, or people with antisocial personality disorder. Is anybody going to have antisocial personality disorder? Anybody? Okay. Does everybody have their character? You know what your problem's going to be? Okay. We need that stuff in by the 17th. So get your character in. If you can, turn your paper in. You need to figure out how you're supposed to act when you are acting this way. And everybody knows what you're going to be. Everybody's got something that's got to share with others. So it's a secret. I can't wait. The first counseling session, I'm going to counsel you, okay? Is there anybody that doesn't have a problem? Your character doesn't have a problem. Now remember, this can't be a problem that you've had in the past or that you have now, because then that's a real counseling session and we're not allowed to do that. So it has to be something that you don't have any contact with. All right. Is everybody okay? 17th. Today's the 4th. Is it? Tomorrow's the 5th. See, I know what day it is. I have to go to Shiprock tomorrow. We have a meeting in Shiprock tomorrow. I have to drive over the mountain.
So is that the reason why the library is going to be closed tomorrow?
Yeah, everybody's going over to Shiprock for Intercampus Day. We're going to get together and pretend we're doing something. I know, it's fun. I have a good time.
No, and then I'll be there the next day to talk about it.
And I'll be complaining about it. So I'm sure you'll hear about it. What are we talking about? Developing a deeper understanding. This is not, I'm not teaching you CBT using this textbook. This textbook teaches Rogerian therapy with using Egan's model. Not that that's important, but this is a technique that is used in social work, okay? And they actually do a pretty good job of getting information from people. So I'm not going to argue with people that are working in social work. So here we are, we're going to develop a deeper understanding. In ordinary conversation, people often communicate in verbal shorthand, only discussing topics in superficial ways, and of course you need to get them to talk about this in depth. We rarely ask for more information. Of course, if you're having a conversation with somebody, a lot of times you're trying to get them out of your office or out of your room, so you don't want them to talk deeper. But of course, if you are trained to do this, then you will ask for more information. You'll try to get deeper into the topic. Most people in conversation, they don't do this. We assume that people use words the same way that we do. That may or may not be true. There may be a difference between age groups. The word, what did we use last time? Hookup? Okay. Yeah. What does that mean? It means that you're connecting your boat to your car, that's a hookup. Okay. You need to get your electricity turned on, that's a hookup, right? Yeah, okay. You want to have a conversation, that's a hookup? No, that's not a hookup. We talked about this last time. Okay. Some people thought it had to do with sex. I don't know. I don't read those books. It is important for practitioners to listen for gaps in information, notice points of words that are not clear, ask about how conclusions are reached. A lot of times they will skip over things. One of the irritating things about working at this institution is they start meetings in the middle instead of at the beginning, so they don't give you all the information that you need. They use a lot of acronyms, so all of a sudden they're piling all this information on you. It's in the middle of the conversation and you have no clue. You're completely lost. I know. But there are some people that know where they actually are, because those are the people that have had this conversation before, and they're starting at the beginning of, well, they're starting where they understand what's going on, and everybody else is completely lost. It drives me nuts. Okay, now I'm pretty smart and I can usually figure things out, but when they start using acronyms and the acronyms don't fit, oh, it's so irritating. Okay, so we're trying to develop deeper understanding. I understand that you're feeling depressed. This is a good question. What is depression like for you? Because not everybody has the same understanding of depression. Explain what depression is for you. Do you feel sad? Do you sleep all the time? Do you have insomnia? These are good questions. What does it feel like to you? One of the things that you're actually trying to get at, one of the most important things is, are you suicidal? Don't ever use the word suicide. But what you need them to tell you how they feel. How low are you? People commit suicide and nobody realized that they were that depressed. So you need to get them to tell you what depression means to them. Does that make sense? Don't use the word suicide. Let them use the word suicide. If they say, I feel worthless, I feel like I can't go on, they haven't used the word suicide, but that's their meaning. So you need to find out just how deep their depression goes. When I take ibuprofen, I get depressed. I know, one dose of ibuprofen and I'm crawling around on the ground like a lizard. I know, but do I feel suicidal? No, not really. But I feel really low. Everything turns gray. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing in the world. I have an emotional reaction to a medication. Okay, so the question is, what does depression mean to them? It may just be sadness. Now, normally, the reality is depression is deep sadness. But sadness is an emotional reaction. Depression is a physical reaction. And you need to figure out whether they are just sad or whether they're really to the point of suicide. That's what you have to determine. The people that were being treated, remember we just talked about this, they were treating depression online and they were reaching out to people online. If they are reaching out to people, then they're probably not depressed, they're probably just sad. Good, so we can handle this. But if they're really depressed, now we got a serious problem. They're not going to reach out to anybody, that's the whole point. They're not going to be able to turn on their computer to be counseled. So the reality is that was probably not really depression, okay, unless somebody else turned on their computer. I hear that you are concerned about your children's behavior. Can you give me some examples? It's always good to find out what they're talking about. Give me an example. People love to tell stories, or usually they do. So you need to get them to give you a narrative. That's what I wanted to say. I noticed that several people in the group are looking at the floor. Will one of you share what you are feeling? If you've ever been in a group therapy session or you've seen it on television, if people are looking around the group, everything's okay. As soon as they start looking at the ground, it means they don't want to make eye contact with other people. Either they have a problem or they think that this other person's problem is so severe they don't want to entertain their problem. In other words, they don't want to deal with it. That hurts them too much, so that's why they're looking at the ground. So if you find somebody actually looking at the ground, you need to find out why they're looking at the ground. When behaviors, feelings, experiences, and the nature of the problem challenge challenge a situation or clear the... What? When behaviors, feelings, experiences, and the nature... this is where I was doing that. I had somebody came to my office this morning, and I was on this slide when they came to my office. When behaviors, and I didn't actually get all the way through it. Whoops, it's a good slide. When behaviors, feelings, experiences, and the nature of the problem, challenge, or situation are clear, then changes can be easily made. The meaning of words and body language can be explored. The basis of conclusions can be enlightening. Using questions to expand and clarify is important in families and in groups. Using questions. We're trying to get a deeper meaning. You said your mom doesn't like you. Will you tell me what makes you think that? Yeah, people will make these broad generalizations. They'll just make a statement. And sometimes you need to find out what the hell they're talking about. Why did you say that? What does that mean? Sometimes we'll use pat phrases that we heard on a movie or something. And we need to find out what they're really talking about. I don't think others care about finishing what we started. Will you tell me what is happening that makes you think that? This is a group situation. That's actually in Japan. This is how crowded it is in Japan. I keep talking about Japan, and you guys don't understand how crowded it is. These guys are coming out of the subway, okay? Look how they're all globbed together. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of people. That's the way it is in Japan. It's so crowded.
Nobody wants to take the stairs.
Well, there's some. We got these guys, but everybody else wants to use the escalator. Yeah, you're right. Lazy, lazy people. Chris and I, of course, we take the stairs. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I know my husband doesn't love me. Will you give me some examples of his behavior that leads you to feel that way? And of course, I tease about my wife all the time. I have no idea whether she actually loves me or not. I'm assuming that this isn't my situation. Well, I know that I don't have a girlfriend. I'm hoping she doesn't have a boyfriend. I know she's got a boyfriend, my grandson. She's going to spend all weekend with my grandson. That's not right. She spent all weekend with me last weekend. Now she's going to spend all weekend with my grandson. He's her real boyfriend, okay? That's just not right.
I found out who grandmas teased their grandkids, their grandsons, and then grandpas teased their granddaughters like that.
I don't have any granddaughters. I only have a grandson. So am I SOL? He doesn't call me grandpa anyway. He calls me cowpaw.
Aw.
Cowpaw.
My son calls his grandpa manpaw.
Mayapah?
Manpaw.
Is that?
He'd say grandpa because of his speech when he was littler. He couldn't say grandpa, so he'd say manpaw.
Isn't that cute?
Mm-hmm.
I just love it. I'm probably the only cowpaw in the whole wide world. The client must be willing to explore more deeply. The client must feel comfortable and safe, of course, and then they will disclose more information. The more comfortable they feel, the more likely they are to disclose more information. It can be useful for the practitioner to ask about the client's hesitancy to share, but the practitioner should not push the clients to share. They will tell you when they're ready. We had a student that last year when we did this class, we had one student that took her for like 6 counseling sessions before she finally let go. And I think probably she was going, oh my God, I don't know what my problem is. And so she hesitated and she hesitated, and it took her like 6 sessions before it finally came blasting out. But I think by then she had figured out what she was supposed to be doing. Gaining further information may help in establishing a trusting relationship. Yada, yada, yada. Silence may be useful in encouraging clients to explore further. This is a problem. Somebody doesn't have to be talking all the time. They may be thinking, and you need to not interrupt their thinking. The more you talk, the less they're thinking. So silence is actually a very good thing because it allows them to think about what they need to talk about. If you fill all the empty space with noise. Let me give you an example. I used to live in Omaha. Omaha's like 80% Catholic. And at one of the Catholic schools, they had a cluster of suicide. And this is a Catholic school. Is anybody Catholic? Suicide is, yeah, you're not supposed to commit suicide if you're Catholic, because then you can't be buried in hallowed ground. I mean, it was one of those horrible, horrible situations. And this is a Catholic high school. So the captain of the football team committed suicide, then the head cheerleader committed suicide. She was the head cheerleader of wrestling. Okay. So she didn't even know the head football player, the captain of the football team. Then 3 other students committed suicide. So they had this cluster of suicides, and about the 4th one, they decided that they needed to do something about it. I know. You know, it's like, there's a problem, let's deny it, and maybe it'll go away, and that was the situation. But this wasn't going away. So they had, they had 3 suicides, and then they had a whole bunch of attempts, suicide attempts. In all, they had 5 completed suicides and 17 attempts at a Catholic school, and you know that was the shocking thing. And of course, everybody in Omaha is just going crazy. So finally, finally, the county called in the federal government. The federal government called in a suicide crisis team, and the suicide crisis team came in from New York City. And so these guys that came in were psychiatrists, they were psychologists, and they were good at their job. The problem was that they were from New York City. Was the problem. This was Omaha, Nebraska. And it was actually a Catholic school that was outside of town. It was between Bellevue and Omaha. So here we have a suicide crisis team came in from New York City. And so they started doing counseling with all the kids. You know, they were trying to, nobody knew who was going to be next. And the fact that they were from New York, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody from New York, but they talk really, really fast. And they have this really unattractive accent. That was an accent. Anyway, so these guys from New York, maybe you've heard their accent on movies or whatever. So they're talking really, really fast, and they've got this different accent from, you know, the corn-fed Cornhuskers of Nebraska. And of course, they can't understand a word they're saying, not just because of their accent, but because they're talking too fast. And you know, these are Cornhuskers. These are kids from Nebraska. So they couldn't really communicate. It was, and people started getting really upset. So what actually stopped the suicides was the fact that the community got together to get rid of these guys. And that's what actually stopped the cluster of suicides. But it was the fact that they couldn't communicate with them. It really upset people. And the fact that these people thought that they knew what they were talking about, and they were talking about shit in New York City, you know. This doesn't have anything to do with farm boys from Nebraska. And they didn't recognize that because they assumed, you know, they had all this information, they had all this knowledge. Some of these guys couldn't even drive because they were from New York City. People don't drive in New York City. And of course, everybody drives a tractor in Nebraska. So it was a really interesting situation. I was working at where was I working? I was working at St. Joseph Hospital in Omaha at the time. And we were one of the trauma centers, so some of these suicides came into us. It was a mess. And you would talk to the parents, you talk to, well, if the kid survived, you talk to the kid. And it was all copycat. It was just all copycat. Well, the 18-year-old had cheerleaders committed suicide, and that's why I committed suicide. Almost all of them were female. All the attempts that were unsuccessful. 4 of the 5 suicides were male, of the completed suicides. And of course the captain of the football team committed suicide. Why am I talking about this? Silence. The other problem was these people wouldn't shut up. So you get in a counseling session with these guys from New York City, and they'd ask you a question, and if the kid didn't answer right away, boy, they're just filling the air with all this, this psychobabble, and it really put people off. And it took that to get people to rebel against the federal government, sending in this crisis team. And it eventually, when was this? Who was president? One of the Bushes was president. Yeah, it was old man Bush was the president. Anyway, really strange situation, just very, very odd situation. So they couldn't stand silence, that's my point. They couldn't stand silence, and they had to fill it up with their blather. But they were talking so fast, and they were talking with such a horrible accent that nobody could understand what they were saying. And people got really upset with that. So my point is that you need to let people think, okay? Especially if they're from Nebraska, things are moving kind of slow. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And they just needed to shut up, and they probably would have been okay, but they wouldn't. Silence allows time for processing, of course. Feelings may be experienced more deeply during silent periods. The more intense the feelings, the more silent time may be needed to experience them. One of the things that you're going to notice is when people have really deep feelings, sometimes they will deny those feelings, but if you allow them to process it, if you allow them to go through the feeling one time, silently, then they're more likely to give you the information. So the reality is that they need to experience it once, and then maybe they will talk about it. Now the second, when they talk about it, that's actually the second time they've dealt with this feeling. The first time, they're going to be extremely emotional. The second time, of course, they're less emotional. And if you talk about it again, that'll be the third time they've dealt with it, probably the 4th or 5th time they've dealt with it because they've been thinking about it. Does all this make sense? Okay. So you need to let them experience the feelings, and that can only be done in silence. And then they may talk about it, and that will be the second time they've dealt with it. Some people need more silent time to process their thoughts and feelings than others. So sometimes you'll have sessions like with Goodwill Hunting. Actually, that really wasn't his problem, but sometimes you just need to let them sit and think. Sit and deal with it within themselves before they can talk about it. Some people need quiet time to think. Silence should be used purposefully. Observe your client's reaction to silence. Some may feel rejected. Some may just feel uncomfortable during the silence. And of course, that was what was going on with these guys from New York City. The other thing about the guys from New York, the counselors from New York, they didn't recognize the body language of the kids from Nebraska. They had no clue. So these kids would be showing them one thing, and they would start talking about something totally different. They thought it meant something completely different. And it was really kind of odd. I'm sure that they would have done a fabulous job with gang members from New York City, with people from Boston, with other urban individuals, but these were rural kids, and most of them were farm kids. And it was totally different. Each situation and each client needs to be thoughtfully considered. So you may have two clients with exactly the same problem, and you're getting exactly the same results, but you're going to have to deal completely opposite with each individual. And you have to be willing to allow that to happen. It would be nice if I could give you a formula. This is depression, and this is how you treat it. But that's not the way it works. Everybody handles their depression differently. The information you're going to be getting, and that's why if two of you have the same problem, like depression, that's okay, that's fine, because the reality is we're going to have to be dealing with this when we start counseling. And of course you will react differently. Each of you will react differently, and that's okay, because that's the way it really is. To develop deeper understanding of clients, besides focusing on their challenges, you need to focus on their strengths, their resources, and positive factors. So one of the things that you need to tell them before they leave is that they have the strength to handle this. You have resilience. This isn't going to kill you. You can handle it. So you need to focus on the positive. Many clients may want their challenges to be understood before they move on to their strengths. And of course, you'll have to read that in your client as to whether they need that or not. By focusing on the client's strengths and resources and other positive factors, the practitioner can help clients feel hopeful, positive, and more able to cope. Highlighting what clients have already achieved shows that the practitioner understands and supports the efforts that they have made. What do you do well? Questions helpful in exploring strengths and positive factors. What do you do well? There you go. Gandalf the Grey is asking your question. What do you do well? I just saw that movie last night. I didn't watch it all the way through. I know it by heart. I've seen it so many times. He's Gandalf the White now. Okay. What do you like about yourself? Well, there's a question for you. What do you like about yourself? What does your family do that is fun? They dye their hair yellow and go out in the rain. What are some good things about this organization? We're looking for positive factors. Tell me about friends who have helped you in the past. What have you done that you are proud of? Empowerment, and of course we talked about empowerment before. Empowerment is achieved when clients know that they have the knowledge, the skills, the competencies, and resources to make decisions, solve problems, and achieve goals. As people use their strengths and resources to face and deal with problems and challenges, they gain confidence. I used to draw blood. That was my job. I was good at it. And the reason I was good at it was because no matter what the person looked like, when I went into somebody's room, I knew I was going to get the blood. Sounds like a vampire, doesn't it? Because I could hit anything. I could hit a tin vein. I could hit a hand vein. One time I drew a lady that was no longer alive. I still got blood out of this lady. It's like drawing blood from a turnip, okay? The reason that you can get blood is because there's blood moving through your body, right? So it's always moving. And that's why your veins stick out, because the blood's moving through your veins. But this lady was no longer alive, so her blood wasn't circulating anymore. So all of her veins were flat. So how did I get her blood? There's only one place you can draw blood from somebody that's no longer alive. Their heart. You have to stick them in the heart. But I didn't stick her in the heart. Actually, I stuck her in the artery. And she wasn't completely dead. She still had some circulation. But they couldn't get a pulse from her. Now, if you can't get a pulse from somebody, are they still alive? Well, possibly. And this lady was actually still alive. She came back to life after I stuck her. But I stuck her right there. It's an artery. That's why you get your pulse from. Anyway. So my point is, I had the confidence that I could draw anybody. And some people have really, really bad veins. I mean, really bad veins. I mean, spider veins on the backs of their hands. And I could get blood out of it. But it's because I have steady hands. I'm almost 70 years old. Look at that. How steady I am. I know. What's wrong with me? I know. I had confidence. So the point is that if you have confidence, you know that you can do something. And that's what you need. You need to gain confidence. You need, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to be doing this counseling. When you go away to graduate school and you start doing this for real, you've already done it 10 times, okay? And you've already handled the toughest people in the world, the people in this classroom. At least 10 of them, or maybe one of them 3 times or something. The toughest one's going to be Travis. I can promise you it's going to be Travis. What's your character's problem?
Depression, grief.
Oh, grief, that's right. Grief. Yeah, I complained about grief before. Okay. It's a tough one to handle here. How do you handle it traditionally? Good one. That's excellent. Thank you for taking that on. Not the easiest thing in the world. So we're going to gain confidence by looking at, by dealing with each other and whatever Sharon's problem is. We don't know. Do you know? Do you have an idea what her problem is? No? Okay, well. I can't wait. Tell me about something that you completed that seemed difficult, like climbing a mountain without a rope. Actually, he does have a rope. There's a rope right there. Okay. Not the easiest thing in the world. What skills have helped you solve previous challenges? How have you resolved previous challenges? Why don't we stop right here and we'll pick this up next time. I'm just trying to give you confidence in counseling, okay? A lot of information. Everybody does it differently. Don't worry about your voice because you're going to find your voice when you start counseling. And this is a good way to practice in these sessions. So please get your histories in. I will put them all online. I haven't done anything with yours. I have actually downloaded it, but I haven't put it online yet. What we will be doing is that everybody's history is going to be online, so you'll be able to review somebody's history that you're going to be counseling. There will be a place for review notes so that you can show me that you have done counseling with this select individual. And that's the way we're going to do it, okay? Any questions? Please get your histories in if you haven't done it yet. Work on your paper. They're due by the 17th. If they're late, by golly, I'm going to wait until you give me the paper. I can't grade it until I get it. Everybody sign?
I was gonna do the depression thing.
Yeah.
So starting the circles
Sure.
you're going up?
Yeah, one.
Yeah.
You need 5?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. That's fine. I don't want you to use depression.
Oh yeah, but
Okay.
it kind of made it interesting when you said like, you know?
Right.
So yeah.
Sure, find something more fun.
Yeah. Try to act it out too, like you said too.
Exactly. The better you act, the better you're teaching.
Yeah.
How
All right.
to handle it.
We'll see you next week.
Okay. Well, actually, yeah, we're gonna have 2 people over there, 2 people over here, 2 people over there. It's gonna be loud. And there's gonna be no confidentiality whatsoever. However, it's still gonna be
For our forms, you indicated that we have to. Several
Food
disorders.
class?
Now, does that disorder have to be here to research?
Yeah, the research needs to
Or
be.
could it just be one disorder for research, but more?
Oh, cool.
And then midterms extended till
Your
11.
Saturday?
Because right
Are you,
now-
you're talking about something specific?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to know, so you're talking about, what's your problem rate?
Do you know what the essay is gonna be about?
This one's.
Yeah, but what, I
On the
mean,
exam?
is that, how many, what's the?
No,
It's
I'm
just
just
one,
reading
just
every-
one.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
which
gonna
one?
tell you, but it's just one.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just focusing on one.
You don't know
Did you look at the?
Right, that's the one you need to focus
On the
on.
application, do we
Pretest?
list several?
No, just the
just
one.
that one.
Just the
Okay.
Yeah,
one.
nothing
Yeah,
like-
you
Even
need-
if we just have one, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want to fool
Usually
them
she
too
knows.
much. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
too tricky,
She didn't
we
say
may never figure out what the problem
You
is.
know, like 30 minutes to do an essay. I
Yeah.
know,
What kind of a disorder?
Just email her at, she said at 1 should be.
What kind of a disorder would a vampire have? Well,
Email
since
me.
vampires don't exist,
Right now.
I would say none.
You said imaginary, right?
Yeah, exactly, imagine it. A zombie? Yeah, okay, wait a minute. Have to put on the makeup to come in club. You're gonna be a zombie.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I knew.
every day.
Is it still recording?
Yeah.